Daniel Webster said, God grant liberty only to those who love it and are always ready to guard and defend it. The Junior Leagues of New York State present The Price of Liberty. The Price of Liberty, the story of early settlers of New York State who fought to gain the freedoms we enjoy today. Today's episode, the Battle of Oriskany, a turning point in the American Revolution. It is a night in November, 1783. The place, the village of New York, population 20,000. The last of the evacuating British Army sails down New York Bay, and Governor George Clinton holds a triumphant reception, marking the final scene of the long revolutionary drama. Among the guests are General George Washington and his staff. As the victory celebration reaches a crescendo, Governor Clinton springs to his feet and attempts to quiet the celebrating crowd.
May I have your attention, please? Your attention, please, for a most momentous proposal. May I propose the first of 13 toasts. The first to the United States of America.
Let us leave this splendid party for a few minutes and ask what made it possible. How was it that New York found itself strangely devoid of a single redcoat that cold November night in 1783? And to find out, we must go back still another 6 years to 1777, and the place, Montreal in Canada, the headquarters of the British General John Burgoyne. General Burgoyne is greeting Colonel St. Ledger.
St. Ledger, it's good to see you.
The pleasure is mine, sir.
Oh, it is, man. We don't stand on formality in this God-forsaken wilderness.
Thank you, sir.
I suppose you're wondering why I sent for you.
You have indeed aroused my curiosity.
Well, here are your orders. Read them.
A plan to divide the colony.
It's more than that. It can mean the end of the rebellion.
It's a bold plan, sir.
Indeed it is. Now, we'll launch a three-pronged attack on Albany here on the Hudson. I shall drive due south to the Champlain Valley. At the same time, Sir William Howe will move up from the Hudson from New York.
And I.
And you, St. Ledger, will strike out for Oswego here on Lake Ontario.
Good.
They will join the Indian Joseph Brant with the Iroquois warriors and the Loyalist forces of Sir John Johnson. From there, you drive on to Albany, first taking over the Mohawk Valley, particularly Fort Schuyler right here. Fort Schuyler, or Stanwix as you may know it, is your main objective. It's the key to the entire Mohawk.
I see. I hear fantastic things about the Indian Brant.
And none of them exaggerations. The devil himself could not have improved upon Brant.
How can that be? I thought Sir William Johnson schooled and polished them.
Oh, he did. Sent him to Wheelock School in New Hampshire.
And didn't he take him to England?
Yes. And in spite of it, Brant remains the savage. But he'll serve you well. And that's all for now, Colonel. Be ready to move at daybreak tomorrow.
Yes, sir. You may consider Fort Schuyler yours.
Good luck.
As dawn broke the next day, Colonel St. Ledger galloped off to Oswego. Meanwhile, at Fort Schuyler, the garrison labored frantically to whip the fort into fighting shape, unaware of St. Ledger's plan to wipe them out. As the men labored in the stifling heat, Thomas Spencer, a half-breed Indian spy for the colonists, galloped through the gates of the fort and headed for the headquarters of the...
Colonel Gansford, where's the colonel?
Here, Tom. Over here.
Colonel, they're on the march.
Who, Tom? Who?
As near as I can find out, about 600 redcoats under St. Ledger and a like number of Indians under Joseph Brant.
St. Ledger and Brant? Where are they now?
About 20 miles west on a forced march.
We're indebted to you, Tom. Colonel Willett, see that Tom has food and rest, and then send him on to arouse General Herkimer and the militia. When St. Ledger arrives, we'll need help. All right, men. General Herkimer is going to talk. He'll tell you why he's called out the Tryon County Militia.
Quiet, please. Quiet. Quiet, please. You have been assembled because of an imminent danger from the west. St. Ledger and Joseph Brant lead a force of British and Indians from Oswego. Quiet! They plan to take Fort Schuyler and then drive on to Albany. Meanwhile, the English Burgoyne moves down the Champlain Valley to meet St. Ledger. At the same time, another enemy force moves up from New York. The idea seems to be to split us from the New England colonies, and we must not let it happen. We'll stop St. Ledger at Fort Schuyler.
When do we march?
Quiet! We march as soon as we can. Therefore, I call upon all men between 16 and 60 to hold yourselves in readiness. Invalids and men older than 60 will arm yourselves for the defense of the women and children and for the protection of your homes.
And the appeal came none too soon, for St. Ledger was on the march, and long before had arrived at the fort, surrounding it with his hordes of redcoats and howling savages.
How much longer do we wait, Colonel St. Ledger?
I am not a man of patience, Brant.
Then why don't we attack?
But they have ignored our first surrender note. They cannot ignore the second.
But it's been 2 hours and still no flag of surrender.
I'll give them another hour. If in that time they...
Colonel, look. They're raising a flag.
Where?
Through the trees on the far side.
I see it. All right, Brant. Hold your Iroquois in hand. Don't let them...
Colonel, that's no flag of surrender.
Don't be a fool.
Take a good look.
It's a flag of red and white stripes and...
Yes, white stars on a field of blue. There's your answer, Colonel.
Flout the authority of the king, will they? And we'll show them what happens to traitors to the crown.
Angered by the sight of the first stars and stripes ever raised over an embattled American fort, St. Ledger and Brant quieted their forces. Then Brant, sensing American help was on the way to the fort, sent Indian scouts slithering through the forest. They returned with the information that General Herkimer was on the march just a few miles away, a fact unknown to the men within the embattled fort.
You sent for me, General Herkimer?
Adam, I want a volunteer to make his way to Fort Schuyler.
I am your man, sir.
Good. You must get through, Adam. We cannot move until we know Colonel Gansworth's plans. Tell the Colonel I intend to force a passage to Fort Schuyler, and tell him to arrange a sortie to divert the attention of the enemy.
How will you know if I get through?
Let them fire 3 cannon. 3 cannon, that will be our signal. We don't move until we hear the boom of the cannon. And Godspeed, Adam Helmer.
Thank you, sir. I'll go.
Colonel Cox.
Yes, sir.
Call a halt up ahead. We'll camp here for the night. Tell the men to turn in, they'll need the rest, and set up a heavy guard. Tell them to keep a sharp lookout. Send out scouting and flanking parties and double the watch.
As General Herkimer's army of 800 eager but undisciplined troops bedded down for the night, there was considerable activity in the camp of the British surrounding Fort Schuyler. In the eerie glow of a lantern in Colonel St. Ledger's tent, Joseph Brant sought to impress his commander with a plan that would wipe out General Herkimer's militia and assure the fall of...
I prefer to meet Herkimer in the field, Brant, rather than in this camp.
Yes, Colonel St. Ledger, but why in the open field? Look, I have sketched a map. Here, 2 miles from our position, here, a deep ravine.
Are you planning an ambush?
Exactly. In order to cross, Herkimer and his wagon train must use a log road at the very bottom of the ravine. Once they're hemmed in by the hills, we surround them.
Do you think it will work?
You have but to give the word.
Then march. Take your 700 Indians. With them, I'll send a Major Watts and a regiment of Royal Greens, along with a force of Loyalists. At all costs, stop Herkimer.
Unaware of the trap set for them, General Herkimer and his men stirred at daybreak the next day. During the night, guards strained to hear the boom of cannon that would announce the arrival of Adam Helmer at Fort Schuyler. They heard nothing but the screech of owls and the terrifying cry of the wildcats. Already a steaming, searing heat hung heavy in the forest. As the men gathered their equipment, General Herkimer took Thomas Spencer, his faithful Indian fly aside, and they talked with the...
I don't know what to think, Spencer. Haddam Hellman should have reached the fort hours ago.
Brandt is clever, General. With his Indians in the forest, anything could have happened.
And you think his scouts have caught Helmer?
Yes, otherwise we would have heard the cannon.
General, sir.
Oh, excuse me, Thomas. Yes, Colonel Cox.
General Herkimer, the men want to push on.
We'll do nothing of the kind. We don't move until we've heard the cannon and know the fort is ready for us. To plunge on headlong would be suicide.
But the men are impatient.
We march when I give the command.
General Herkimer, unless you give the order to march at once, I must think of you as a Tory and a coward.
A coward? A Tory? Young man, I am not. I'm placed over you as father and guardian. And I will not lead you into difficulties I can't get you out of. You want me to lead on? You say why wait? All right, if that be your wish. If you will have it so, the blood be on your heads. Forward! Colonel Cox, better ride up here with me.
Yes, sir, General Herkimer. You know, I'm going to feel a lot better when we get out of this ravine.
Yes, I know. It's close quarters for a group our size. Tell me, Cox, how do we shape up?
Well, the militia spread out behind us on the flat, and Colonel Vischer's supply wagons are just beginning to descend into the ravine.
All right, better ride back and keep the wagons moving.
Yes, sir. I'll tell Colonel Vischer to... Oh.
Colonel Cox!
Colonel Cox has been hit. He's been hit.
Seek cover, men! We're ambushed! Make for the trees! Make for the trees!
Instantly, swarms of red devils dashed down the ravine, and then followed a scene of the worst confusion as the troops realized they were surrounded by painted savages with no avenue of escape. At the first discharge, many were killed, while others, wounded, had fallen into a slimy marsh, either to be drowned or to receive the death stroke by hatchet or knife from the foe who became bold at the helpless situation of the soldiers. But General Herkimer, though taken by surprise, was equal to the occasion. He regrouped his men, fought his way to the top of the hill, leaving the bottom of the ravine to the dead and dying.
General Herkimer, the situation is hopeless.
Fight the battle, son. We're not dead yet. Form yourselves in circular squads. Meet them with bayonet and club musket, but don't give out.
The general's been hit! The general!
Help me off this horse. Give me a hand.
You'll be all right, sir.
Pull the saddle off the horse.
Yes, sir.
Rest me on it under the tree. It's just my leg. Yes, just my leg.
And having lighted his pipe, he sat and continued to order the battle with the utmost firmness and composure. And however rebellious and headstrong his men had appeared on the march, his orders were now obeyed with the utmost confidence in the judgment and loyalty of their leader. And the battle went on, interrupted for a while by a torrent of rain and thunder that echoed through the valley. During the storm, the dull boom of 3 cannon shots told the men that Helmer had safely reached the fort. Little by little, the courageous militia got the upper hand through bush fighting that mowed down the Tories. The frightened Indians, seeing their allies dead and dying, took off in all directions. And from out of a situation that at first seemed hopeless, the Patriots had fought to victory. Thus ended the bloodiest battle of the Revolution, the Battle of Oriskany. St. Leger was finally forced to retreat to Canada. Because of Herkimer's stand, Burgoyne was later forced to surrender at Saratoga, and the plan of the British to divide the colonies never did succeed. And because of the Battle of Oriskany in 1777, because of the magnificent courage of our early American fighters, General Washington, on the night of the British evacuation from New York 6 years later, was able to propose the last of 13 toasts. as he arose from the festive table resplendent in his uniform as Commander-in-Chief of the victorious American forces, he said,
"May America be an asylum forever to the persecuted of the earth." You have been listening to the story of the Battle of Oriskany. This program was presented by the Junior Leagues of New York State in cooperation with the State Department of Education and was produced in the studios of WPTR Albany, New York.